Welcome to Solutions Studio. This is a free series on C programming language. If you like these videos, please subscribe to follow along with this series. Also, please like and leave a comment and share the video to help spread this series. Hello and welcome to this episode. In this episode, I have an exercise for you. This is the exercise, the explanation of the program, and I want you to create this program in C. So write a program that reads two integers from the user, then displays their sum, product, difference, quotation, and remainder. Now pause the video and start writing your code. Once you have finished, then come back to the video and see how I solve this problem. Welcome back, and now let's start our coding. Now I have created my preprocessor directive, which is I'm including the standard input-output library in my program, and I have written my main function. Now let's create two variables to store the numbers from the user. It's always a good idea to initialize your variables, just like I have initialized my integers to 0. Now, as you can see, using puts function, I am prompting the user to enter the first number, and using scanf, I will assign that number to integer 1. Now I have created my second prompt, enter the second number, and I will assign that number to integer 2. Now let's go and create our integer sum, and also do the calculations in the declaration. Integer 1 plus integer 2. I've created the variable and I've also did the calculation in the declaration. Now I have done the same thing with difference, quotient, and remainder. Difference is integer 1 minus integer 2, quotient is integer 1 divided by integer 2, and the remainder is integer 1 mod integer 2. Now let's go and show these values on the screen for the user. You can see that I have used printf statements to show the sum, product, difference, quotient, and remainder on the screen, and also I've used the variables to get the calculations from here and output it on printf. Now let's go and save this program first. I will name it arithmetics, and it's a C source file. Save. Now before running this program, let's go and add something in the program, which is very important, to add a new line for each of these printfs. Otherwise, all of the printfs will print one after another and it will become a mess to read the results. The first number is 12, second number 5. So you can see that the sum is 17, product is 60, difference is 7, quotient is 2. That means when 12 is divided by 5, the result of the division will be 2 and the remainder will be 2 as well. 2 times 5 is equal to 10, plus 2, 12. And that's it for this episode. I hope to see you in the next. Hello and welcome to this episode. In this episode I have another exercise for you. The name of the exercise is Final Velocity. So write a program that asks the user to enter the initial velocity and acceleration of an object and the time that has elapsed. Place them in the variables u, a, and t and print the final velocity v and distance traversed s using the following equations. Now let's go and solve this problem. First, I want to add my preprocessor directive and main function. Now I want to define my variables u, a, and t, which is u is for initial velocity, a is for acceleration, and t is for time. Now let's go and create our prompt, our messages to the user. I've created my prompt, please enter the initial velocity, and then I will store that velocity into the u variable using scanf. And now I want to copy and do the same thing for a, for acceleration and time. Now that I've created my prompts, let's go and define our variables for final velocity and the distance traversed. I have created the initial velocity formula and assigned that formula to the v variable. And the s variable will cover the distance traversed, and I have done the calculations based on the formula provided. Now I want to create my final prompts for the user to print the final velocity and the distance traversed. That's it. I have created the final messages for the user as well using printf. And now let's go and save this program. Now let's go and run this program. As you can see, I've done a mistake. I have not added the statement terminators for these two statements. I need to add them. Now let's go and execute. That's it. Enter the initial velocity. The initial velocity's unit is meter per second, so 10 meter per second. The acceleration is 5 meter per second square, and the time elapsed is 100 seconds. Okay, we've done a mistake. Let's go and see what is our mistake. You can see that I have done a mistake in here. Instead of T, I have written U. So now let's go and make it correct. T. And now run it once again. Let's go and set the initial velocity to 10 meters per second, acceleration 5 meters per second square, and the time elapsed 100 seconds. You can see that we got the results. The final velocity is this and the distance transferred is this value. That's it for this episode. See you in the next episode. Hello and welcome to this episode. In this episode, I have another exercise for you called comparing values. So write a program that asks the user to enter the highest rainfall ever recorded in one season for a country and the rainfall in the current year for that country. Obtain the values from the user, check if the current rainfall exceeds the highest rainfall, and print an appropriate message on the screen. If the current rainfall is higher, the program should assign that value as the highest rainfall ever. Use only the single selection form of the if statement. And that is the exercise. It's very important that you do the exercise on your own. Pause the video, do the exercise on your own. And once you're finished or you haven't been able to do it, then you can continue watching the video and I will solve this exercise in this video. See you! Welcome back and let's start coding on this exercise. I have included the standard input-output library and I have created my main function. Now I have created two variables, one for the highest rainfall and one for the current year's rainfall, and I have initialized both of them to 0. I've created two prompts for the user to enter the highest rainfall in their country, and then I will store that value in the highest rainfall variable, and then another prompt is asking the user to enter the current year rainfall in a season for their country and store that value in the current year rainfall. It's very important not to forget the ampersands, as I have forgotten. Yep, now it's good. Now I have created a comparison between the current year's rainfall and the highest rainfall. So if the current year's rainfall is higher than the highest rainfall, then this message will appear for the user that this year's rainfall exceeds the highest in your country's history. And also the current year's rainfall will be assigned to the highest rainfall value, because now the current year's rainfall is the highest rainfall in history. Finally, a message will appear for the user that will tell the user the highest rainfall ever recorded in the country's history. And if that highest rainfall was from this year, obviously the value of this year is assigned to the highest rainfall so this year's rainfall will appear on this message. If it was not this year's rainfall, then some other number that was initially entered by the user in here will appear for the user. Let's go and save this program. And now let's go and run the program. Enter the highest rainfall in a season for your country. I will say 10. Enter the current year's rainfall in a season for your country. I will say 5. So now the highest rainfall ever recorded is 10. Now let's go and run this program once again, and I will change the values. So enter the highest rainfall in a season for your country. That is 10 still. But the current year rainfall in a season for your country exceeds the highest rainfall. Now that is, for example, 13. Now you can see that I have two messages. This year's rainfall exceeds the highest in your country's history. And the highest rainfall ever recorded is 13 instead of 10. That's it for this episode. See you in the next episode. Hello and welcome to this episode. In this episode, I want to have another exercise for you. The name of the exercise is Arithmetic, Largest Value and Smallest Value. So write a program that inputs 3 different integers from the keyboard, then displays the sum, the average, the product, and the smallest and the largest of these numbers. Use only the single selection form of the if statements that we have learned so far in the previous videos. The screen dialog should appear as follows. Enter 3 different integers, then the user enters 3 different integers, then the program shows the sum, average, product, smallest value and largest value. So go and get started and solve the problem. Once you have solved the problem, or if you couldn't solve the problem, come back to the video and watch the rest of this video and see how I did it. Welcome back. Now let's go and get started and write this program. I have included my standard input-output library, and also I have written my main function. Let's go and define some variables. You can see that I have defined 3 variables of type integer to store the numbers that I will get from the user. Integer 1, integer 2 and integer 3, and I have initialized all of them to 0. Now using putString function, I have prompted the user to enter 3 different integers, and I will assign those 3 different integers to these variables integer 1, 2 and 3 using scanf. Now I have defined the rest of the variables. One variable for sum, and I have done the calculation here. Another variable for average, and I have done the calculation here. Sum divided by 3 because it's 3 numbers. So the sum will be divided by 3. Integer product will be the multiplications of these 3 numbers. Integer smallest. For the time being, I have assumed that integer 1 is going to be the smallest of them all, and I've also assumed that integer 1 is going to be the largest of them all. Now going on using printf, we're going to fix this. Initially, we assumed that integer 1 is the smallest of them all between these numbers. But now we are going to fix that, and I'm going to compare the smallest value, which is integer 1, with integer 2. If integer 2 is smaller than integer 1, then the value of integer 2 will be assigned to the smallest. And again, we go to integer 3 and we check the smallest value with integer 3. If integer 3 is even smaller than the smallest values between these two variables, then we assign integer 3 to the smallest variable. Now the same concept is used for the largest number between these three integers as well. Initially we assumed that integer 1 is the largest of them all, but now we're going to check that, and we will see that if integer 2 is larger than integer 1, which was assigned to largest, then largest variable will have a different value, which will be the value of integer 2. And the same way we are going to compare it with integer 3. In case integer 3 was larger, then the value of integer 3 will be assigned to the largest. Now finally, I have created the message for the user that will show the message the sum, the average, product, smallest and largest number. And I've used printf and I've used the variables to show the numbers. Now let's go and save this program first. Now the program is saved. Let's go and run this program. Enter three different integers: 10, 20, 30. You can see that the sum is 60, the average is 20, the product is 6,000, smallest is 10, and the largest number is 30. That's it for this episode. See you in the next episode. Welcome to this episode, and I have another exercise for you, converting from seconds to hours, minutes and seconds. So write a program that asks the user to enter the total time elapsed in seconds since an event occurred, and convert the time to hours, minutes and seconds, and the time should be displayed as this format: hours, minutes and seconds. Use the modulus operator. That's the hint. Start coding and try to solve this problem, then come back to this video and see how I did it. Welcome back. Now let's go and create this program. Here I have created three integers: one integer for the time that's elapsed in seconds, another one for the time that's elapsed in minutes, and another one for the time that is elapsed in hours. The time that's elapsed in seconds, we will get that from user, and for the time that's elapsed in minutes and hours, we will do our calculations to come up with those values. Here I've created a prompt for the user to enter the time elapsed in seconds, and I will store that value into that variable which is called time elapsed in seconds. This is the variable, and I will store the value from the user into this variable. Now here we come to the tricky part of our program. We are trying to calculate the time that's elapsed in minutes. So the time that's elapsed in minutes is equal to the time that's elapsed in seconds divided by 60. For example, if I have 100 seconds and if I divide it by 60, I have 1 minute. That's the one in here. Ignore this part as we are not going to work with the floating points at this moment. So it's going to be 1 minute. Now how do I calculate the remainder of the seconds? Because about 40 seconds will be remaining. The 40 seconds that is going to be remaining is going to be calculated using this statement. Time elapsed in seconds is going to get a new value, and that value is that time elapsed in seconds mod 60. So for example, if I have 100 once again, and if I mod it with 60, you can see that the remaining is 40. 1 minute went into the division and the 40 seconds is remaining with us here in the time elapsed in seconds, and we have given the time elapsed in seconds a new value. Now we're going to use the same logic here with hours as well. We're trying to figure out if the time that is elapsed in minute it's more than 59, then it becomes an hour. And how do we calculate the hour? The time that's elapsed in hours is equal to the time that's elapsed in seconds divided by 60. For example, if I have 100 minutes and if I divide it by 60 minutes, I have 1 hour. And how do I find the remaining minutes? Well, let's go and do a mode. If I have 100 minutes and if I mode it with 60, then I have 40. That's the remaining minutes. And that's how we have found the minutes as well, the remaining minutes as well. Now let's go and print this information to the user. And finally, it's time for us to display the time elapsed in this format for the user, and we have used printf in here and the variables that we had created before and the values that we had calculated before. Now let's go and save this program. Let's go and execute this program. I have done a mistake. Okay, I have the spelling for include is not correct. So the time elapsed in seconds, let's assume that it's less than 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds. You can see that it's 30 seconds and the format is in this format. Let's go and do it once again. This time, let's assume that it is 61 seconds. You see that it's 1 minute and 1 second. And now let's go and assume that the time that we want is about 5,000 seconds. That is 1 hour, 23 minutes and 20 seconds. That's it for this episode. See you in the next. Hello and welcome to this episode. In this episode we have another exercise called odd or even. So write a program that reads an integer and determines and displays whether it's odd or even. Use the remainder operator. This is the hint for you. Use the remainder operator. An even number is a multiple of 2. Any multiple of 2 leaves a remainder of 0 when it's divided by 2. Try to create this problem, and if you could not do it, come back to this video and watch on how I do it. Hello and welcome back. So let's go and get started. Here I've created the basics of my C program. Let's go and continue. I have created a variable where I will store the number that I'm going to get from the user. Now I've created the prompt for the user to enter an integer, and I'm going to store that using scanf to the user number variable. Now I have created two if statements. The first if statement states that if the user number is divided by 2 and the remainder is 0, that number is even, and if the user number is divided by 2 and the remainder is not 0, that number is odd. That's basically the logic of odd and even numbers. Even numbers are multiples of 2 and odd numbers are not multiples of 2. Let's go and run this program. Okay, I forgot a semicolon here. So please an integer. I will enter 5. You can see that the number is odd. Let's go and execute another number. 10. The number is even. And that's it for this episode. See you in the next one. Hello and welcome to yet another exercise. In this exercise we are going to write a program that reads two integers and determines and displays whether the first is a multiple of the second. The hint is to use the remainder operator. So start coding and try to solve this problem. Once you're done, come back to the video and I will show you how I did it. Welcome back, let's go and solve this problem. I have included my standard input-output library and also created my main function. I have created two variables. One is the first number and the other is the second number, and I have initialized them to 0. Now I have created a prompt for the user and I'm trying to ask the user to enter two integers. Once the user has entered the integers, the first one will be stored in the first number integer and the second one will be stored in the second number integer. Now I have created an if statement that is the main logic of this program. So if the first number is divided to the second number and the remainder is equal to 0, the first number is a multiple of the second number. And now, similar like before, if first number is divided by second number and the remainder is not 0, then first number is not a multiple of the second number. Now let's go and run our program. Enter two integers. I will enter 10 and 5. 10 is a multiple of 5. Let's go and run it once again. Now 11 and 5. 11 is not a multiple of 5. And that's it for this episode. See you in the Hello and welcome to this episode. In this episode, we have yet another exercise. It's called integer value of a character. So in previous videos, you have learned about integers and the type int. C can also represent uppercase letters and lowercase letters. As an integer, you can display the integer equivalent of uppercase A by executing the statement printf, the conversion statement for an integer, and then you give it a character. A letter is represented by char data type in C, and you can perform a scanf using this conversion specification. For example, char A, this is a variable, and you can scan a character using %sign and C, and then you can store it in that variable. So write a program that takes in a letter from user input and displays both the letter and the integer representation of the letter. For example, if the input is A, the output should be A is equal to 65. So go ahead and solve this problem and come back to the video and see how I solved this problem. Hello and welcome back. Now let's go and start our programming. So first of all, I have defined a variable which the name of the variable is character and the type of the variable is char, which means a character. And I have initialized this variable to a space. So the initial value of this character is a space. Now let's go and continue. Now here I have created a prompt for the user to enter a character, and I'm storing that character into this variable, which the name of the variable is character, and using this conversion specification, which uses C for character. And finally, I'm using a printf statement. In the printf statement, first I have a conversion specification of a character for this variable, which is called character, and then I have a conversion specification of an integer for the variable character. And now let's go and try running this program. First I'm going to save it. Now let's go and run. You can see that it's asking me for a character, let's say G, and the value for G is 103. Let's go and try something else, such as a digit, maybe 8, and the value for 8 is 56. And finally, let's input some symbol such as @ and the value for @ is 64. And if you're wondering where these values come from, go and check out ASCII on the internet and find out more about it. That's it for this episode. Hello and welcome to this episode. In this episode, we have another exercise. The name of the exercise is summing the digits of an integer. So write a program that inputs one 4-digit number, sums each of the individual digits, and displays the result. So there's a hint for you: use division and remainder operator. For example, if the input is 3581, the output should be 17. Explanation: 3 plus 5 plus 8 plus 1 is equal to 17. Try to pause the video and solve the problem. If you weren't able to solve the problem, then come back to the video and watch how I did it. Welcome back, and let's go and solve this problem. So here I've created an integer type variable, which the name of the variable is 4-digit number. I have initially initialized it to 0. Now I'm prompting the user to enter a 4-digit number, and I'm going to store that 4-digit number using scanf in this variable 4-digit number. Let's go and continue. Here I have created another variable Sam, which will store the sum of the digits of this number, this 4-digit number. So we will use this variable to store the sum of the 4-digit number, and initially it's initialized to 0. Let's go and continue. So here the logic of the program starts. To find the sum of the 4-digit number, I'm going to divide this 4-digit number into 10 and get the remainder. So how it works, for example, if that number is 4, 5, 6, 7, if I mode it with 10, I get the last digit, which is going to be 7. And I'm going to add this number with Sam. So finally Sam gets, the initial value of Sam was 0, now it gets a 7 for example, and now the new value of Sam is going to be 7. Now I will bring some changes to the 4-digit number. What I will do is that I will divide the 4-digit number by 10. For example, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's go and do it once again. 4, 5, 6, 7. And if I divide it by 10, you can see that there will be a floating point value. But because we are using the integer variable type, this 0.7 will not be created, and the 3 remaining numbers will stay in the number, and the last part will be omitted because the type of this variable is integer. And that's how the logic of the program works. So now that we have in the 4-digit number 4, 5, 6 and the 7 was omitted, now if I divide it by 10 and get the remainder, let's go and do that, divide it by 10 and get the remainder using mode. Now I get another digit, which is going to be 6, and I'm going to store that 6 in Sam. So I'm going to copy this statement once again, and once again I'm going to remove this 6 by doing what? We have 4, 5, 6. If I divide it by 10, divide by 10, now you can see that I have 4, 5. The 6 is the floating point, and because we are not storing the floating point, I will lose the last digit, and the new value of the 4-digit number is going to be 45, 2 digits remaining. And you can see that I have done this for 2 digits of this number, 2 times the same operations. If I copy these operations once again, now this will add the 3rd integer to the sum, and we'll get rid of the 3rd digit, and once again, and the last operation will add the 4th digit of this 4-digit number into Sam, and we'll get rid of its final value. To be honest, this last part is not even necessary. Now let's go and print our result. Let's go and save this program, and let's go and execute it. Enter a 4-digit number. For example, I will enter 4, 5, 6, 7. You can see that the result is 22. 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 6 is 15, plus 7 is 22. And that's it for this episode. See you in the next one. Hello and welcome to another challenge sorted in ascending order. Write a program that inputs 3 different numbers from the user. Displays the numbers in increasing order. Recall that an if statement's body can contain more than one statement. Prove that your script works by running it on all 6 possible orderings of the number. Does your script work with duplicate numbers? So go and start coding on your computer and solve this problem. If you couldn't solve this problem, come back to this video and I will solve it for you. Welcome back. Now let's go and solve this problem. Here I have defined 3 variables, number 1, number 2 and number 3, and we will use these 3 variables to store the numbers that we get from the user. Now I have prompted the user to enter 3 different numbers, and I will store those numbers in the variables that we have defined here. Now I have defined some other variables, which is the largest number variable, the second largest and the third largest. So for the time being we assume that the number 1 is going to be the largest number, and number 2 the second largest, and number 3 the third largest. This is just an assumption. It does not mean that it's correct for the time being. Later on we will correct that. And I have defined a temporary integer that we are going to use later on. Now the main logic of our program starts here. Let's assume that the numbers that we have are 3, 7 and 6. 3 is number 1, 7 is number 2 and 6 is number 3. And you know that we have defined number 1 as the largest number, number 2 as the second largest number and number 3 as the third largest number, just based on assumption. Now let's go and check some facts. For example, if the second largest number, which is 7, is larger than the largest number, which is 3, then swap those numbers. Later on we will discuss how does the swap works. But for the time being, know that we just swap these numbers. So if the second largest, which is 7, is bigger than the largest number, which is 3, then swap them. Then in here we're going to swap them, of course. 3, then it becomes 7, 3, 6. Now let's go here and see how it works. So if our third largest number, which is 6, is bigger than the second largest number, which now it has become 3, then what to do? Then swap. And now it becomes 7, 6, 3. And the last part, we need to copy this part once again. Why? Because assume if this part of our code was 8, now 8 has taken over 3, but it is not taken over 7 yet. And for that to happen, we need to copy this part of the code once again, so this check is done once again. And that's it. That's basically the logic of our program. And if we try to print the numbers in ascending order now, it shall work. Now let's go and print these numbers in ascending order. Printf and now if I try to run this program, let's go and run it. Let's enter 3 different numbers, 3, 7, 6. The ascending order is 3, 6, 7. And if I try all of the 6 combinations of these 3 numbers, it will work for all of them. If you want, go and try all of them and see if it works. If it doesn't, leave a comment below and we will see if we have made a mistake. So the combination of these 3 numbers will be, for example, I want to show you in here, it will be 3, 6, 7, 3, 7, 6, again, 6, 7, 3, 6, 3, 7, and then 7, 6, 3, and then 7, 3, 6. As I said before, try all of these combinations with this program and see if it works. If it doesn't work, let me know in the comments below and we will see if we have made a mistake. And does this script work with duplicate numbers? It definitely works with duplicate numbers. Let me know in the comment section below what do you think about the duplicate numbers and why do you think it works. That's it for this episode. See you in the next one. Hello and welcome to this episode. In this episode, I have another exercise for you, swap values. So assume that we have 2 variables A and B, and A is assigned a value of 3 and B is assigned a value 7. So using a C program, swap the values of each variable and print the results on screen. Pause the video, go and do this on your own. Come back to this video if you were not able to complete it, and we will see how we're going to do this. Welcome back. Now let's go and start coding. Now I want to create my variables. Integer A is equal to 3 and integer B is equal to 7. Now to be able to swap between these 2 variables, I need a temporary variable so that I can store some data on that variable temporarily. Let's go and create it. I've created my temporary variable and I have assigned it a value of 0. Now let's go and do the swap. You might think that if we assign the value of B to A and the value of A to B, then the swap has been done. Well, that is not really correct, because the value of B is 7 and I have given 7 to the value of A. Now A has become 7 as well. Now if I try to give B the value of A has become 7 already. There's no 3 in A, and that's why both of these variables, they become 7 and the swap will not work. The proper way to do this is to store the value of one of these variables in a temporary variable. Now let's go and do that. Now I have assigned the temporary variable the value of a, and I'm going to assign the value of b to a now. And finally, I get the previous value of a from the temporary variable. And that's it, the swap has been done. Now let's go and check out the results using a printf statement. You can see that now a has become 7 and b has become 3. The values are being swapped. And that's it for this episode. See you in the next one.